Top 10 Richest Criminals of All Time. Whoever tells you that crime doesn't pay is wrong, so very, very wrong. The bit that doesn't pay, however, is getting caught. After all, if you look at some of the richest criminals of all time, it's clear that crime pays very well indeed, at least while it lasts. While most end up dead or in jail, very lucky few get to spend their money. Number 10. Joseph Kennedy, $400 million. Yes, he's that kind of Kennedy. He didn't look like he was much of a criminal, but it turns out he was one of the most notorious criminals of all time, using his connections and his wealth to increase his net worth by millions during the Prohibition. He sold bootleg alcohol to people who weren't allowed to have it, and it's said he even had a woman raped so he could frame someone else to get rid of the competition. He was close with crime lords and bosses from some of the most notorious crime families in the world, and he would have been worth billions today. Meyer Lansky, $400 million. Known less by his actual name than his nickname, the mob's accountant, this guy wasn't exactly on good terms with the IRS. He worked closely with the most famous mobsters and mafia members in the world and still has millions hidden away even after being gone for more than 30 years. Lansky was a Jewish immigrant from Poland who would make a fortune from gambling, both legal and illegal. He would join notorious gangsters Charles Lucky Luciano and Ben Bugsy Siegel to run a gang that would be known as Murder, Inc. Lansky would later turn to focus on gambling, setting up operations in Florida, Las Vegas and Cuba before the Cuban Revolution. In 1982, Forbes would name him one of the 400 richest people in America. Lansky would be indicted for tax evasion and fled to Israel. He would later return to the US to face charges and was acquitted in 1974. He died a free man in Miami, aged 83. Number 8. Griselda Blanco, $500 million. It's not common to hear much about female gangsters, but she reigned as one of the most dangerous and profitable female criminals in the 70s and 80s, particularly in Miami and particularly in the drug trade. Blanco's high-profile crimes awarded her many nicknames, the Godmother, Queen of Cocaine and Black Widow among them, and led to her murder in 2012. The Colombian-born immigrant was a high-level operative in the Medellin cartel. She is well known for committing her first murder when she was only 11, and she took her business just as seriously even though it's been assumed she is a sociopath. She is a known rapist and she killed all 3 of her husbands. She's also suspected of killing more than 200 people by hand in her life. She fell off the radar in 2007. Number 7. Anthony Salerno, $600 million. Italian mobster Fat Tony Salerno made his millions running the numbers and drugs racket in East Harlem after many other Italian mobsters left the area as it became more black and Latino in the 1960s, making tens of millions of dollars in the process. As the frontman for the Genovese crime family, Salerno was named America's top gangster by Fortune magazine in 1986 due to his wealth of more than $1 billion and extended influence. In 1988, Salerno was convicted of racketeering charges and was sentenced to 70 years in prison. However, by 1992, Salerno's health was deteriorating in prison. The New York Times reported he died of complications from a stroke while serving terms of 100 years and 70 years on separate federal racketeering convictions. Number 6. Joaquin El Chapo Loera, $1 billion. You might know him better as El Chapo. He's one of the most successful, most famous drug lords of all time in Mexico, and his net worth really does show that. Chapo's been in the news for the last 10 years due to his escape from prison and eventual capture. Also, his interview with one Sean Penn became extremely famous. It's possible he's still dealing drugs behind bars, and it's estimated that his worth is actually closer to $5 billion. It's only a matter of time before El Chapo tries to escape again, perhaps to fulfill his $100 million bounty on Donald Trump. Number 5. Susumu Ishii, $1.5 billion. Sadly, Ishii began his life as part of the military but decided after living through the war he'd become a gangster. He was involved in the Inagawakai gang and worked his way up the ladder pretty quickly in terms of his street smarts and his fearlessness when it came to killing anyone who dared to come in his way. He was famous for real estate scams, but he lost most of his money in the late 1980s. Some say that's the reason behind his death. Either way, he was a major criminal. Number 4. Carlos Enrique Leda Rivas, $2.7 billion. The Medellin cartel co-founder and drugs lord began a life of crime dealing stolen cars, marijuana and eventually cocaine. A titan of the cocaine industry, Leda oversaw legions of gunmen, racing boats, airplanes, a ranch with a racetrack and even his own small neo-fascist party. There are multiple theories about Leda's capture, including that his own cartel wanted him out of the picture and that Pablo Escobar himself provided the police with Leda's location. Leda was tried and sentenced to life without parole, plus 135 years, which he got reduced to 55 years total in 1992. Leda remains imprisoned in the US. Number 3. Al Capone, $3.2 billion. Whether you know him as Public Enemy Number 1 or Scarface, the infamous gangster amassed a multi-million-dollar fortune through bootlegging, prostitution and gambling during the Prohibition era. Capone is allegedly responsible for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929 and attempted murder on Bugs Moran, head of the Northside Gang. While he wasn't indicted for his racketeering, Capone served 6.5 years for income tax evasion. He was released and later died in Miami in 1947. Number 2. Amado Carrillo Fuentes, $25 billion. Allegedly the second richest drug lord, Amado Carrillo Fuentes worked with infamous drug kingpin Pablo Escobar to smuggle cocaine and other drugs from Colombia into Mexico and the US. He was known as Lord of the Skies due to his private fleet of planes, including 22 private 727 jet airliners, which were used to import cocaine from Colombia to Mexico, where it was later smuggled into the United States. Fuentes built a multi-billion-dollar drug empire and made an estimated $25 billion plus in revenue from his illicit activities. Fuentes evaded the DEA his entire life. In 1997, he died from an alleged 8 hours of extreme plastic surgery to alter his appearance. The plastic surgeons who operated on Fuentes were found dead afterward, encased in concrete inside steel drums and reportedly showing signs of torture. Number 1. Pablo Emilio Escobar, $30 million. Escobar is perhaps the most notorious drug lord of the modern era. He ran the Medellin cartel, which imported billions of dollars of cocaine into the United States. The king of cocaine became one of the richest people in the world by the time he turned 35. It's impossible to verify how much Escobar made in total, but it is estimated to be nearly $30 billion. He bought in an estimated $420 million a week, smuggling in an estimated 80% of the US cocaine supply in the 1980s. Forbes estimated Escobar's personal net worth at $3 billion in 1989 as one of the world's top billionaires, recognizing that not all of them made their money legally. Escobar bought various residences and safe houses with his wealth. He escaped La Catedral, his personal luxury prison, and spent the rest of his life evading the authorities. He died in a shootout 16 months after his escape.